Hi everybody, this is Ian from Lean Media, and today I'm going to be doing a slightly different type of video. And this is basically about some of the economic pain that currently is rocketing through the market and what it means for your company if you are engaged in a media business. And I'm specifically talking about things like an online website that maybe has some sort of subscriber base, or they're generating advertising revenue by getting lots of people to look at their news articles or something like that. So things are going to change right now. And I've been through several recessions in the past. And even though the causes of this one are a bit different, we have a war going on in Ukraine, we have cryptocurrency is bottoming out, people are talking about recession. The causes are this time are different than they were 15 years ago or 20 years ago. However, the impact on media companies will be similar in many respects, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. I actually wrote a tweet yesterday on my Lean Media Org Twitter account, and I want to expand on some of those things, specifically as they apply to some sort of media business, where the business really is getting eyeballs on web pages or reading articles or doing something like that. And here's how I see things shaking out over the next year or so. So first of all, it is a roller coaster ride, and we're on the downward slope right now. What's going to be happening is people are going to be spending less money. That not only means consumers, but also businesses, and that really impacts media companies' bottom lines. So what's going to happen, for instance, if you are a media company and you're selling advertising, your CPMs will start to go down. And the reason is because there's not going to be as much demand for them, and that's whether you're using some sort of ad network, or whether you have, I don't know, you work out something with your advertising partners to have some sort of placement or mentions in your newsletters or whatever. They're not going to be willing to pay as much money. There won't be as many people looking to pay as much money. If you're in certain areas of the industry, it is going to be really, really tough. For instance, if you are, depend on startups for your advertising income, or for your partnerships or whatever, those startups are feeling a lot of pain right now because their investors are pulling back. So if you are using advertising, expect CPMs to go down. You won't be making as much money from CPMs, regardless of how you're setting it up, whether it's some sort of internal placement on your website or your newsletter or whatever, or you're using, some sort of Google ad network or something like that. You're going to lose some money on that. So be aware of that. But the flip side of that is, if you are using like Facebook advertising to market your brand, your CPMs should be going down as well. That's despite the problems we've had with iOS in the past year or so. I think costs for advertising on Facebook are going to drop a lot, because a lot of companies are just cutting their marketing budget to the bone right now. And that means that bid levels on Facebook and Google and elsewhere, they're going to decline. So the next thing, non-essential services and expenses. So for media companies, these are often things like, travel budgets, things like maybe enterprise software that they use to keep the team together. So let's say instead of spending money on whatever a Zoom professional level account costs, or a professional level Dropbox account costs, you're going to be looking at the lower cost options, or even the free options if you can get by. So for instance, Zoom, you actually don't need to have a professional level account, but your conversations won't be longer than 40 minutes, and maybe there'll be some other restrictions as well. For larger media companies, what they usually start doing is cutting other types of non-essential expenses. So a long time ago, 20 years ago, when the dot-com bubble popped, the company I was working at, they started cutting. They basically totally eliminated their training budget. Travel was down. All kinds of other stuff was going on. The next point about staff positions not being backfilled. So let's say that a media company has some open listings for writers or designers or an engineer. Those are going to be withdrawn, and people are going to be asked to do just use existing resources. And if somebody leaves the company, they're not going to backfill that position. So they won't hire somebody new to replace it. And that means everybody else is going to have to kind of do that position's responsibilities, which is really a pain in the butt, but that's just the way things work out. People will start talking about layoffs, the L word. Layoffs are really a tough subject, and it just basically depends. If you have the money to support operations, with a lot of staff. And if the revenues doesn't look right, or maybe there's some other factor going on, these media companies are going to make some hard choices and will have to lay people off. And that includes full-time employees as well as freelance stringers and folks like that. And it's really, really depressing for the people who are affected by layoffs. And also, it feels terrible for the people who are left, maybe including the managers who had to deliver the bad news. I was in one situation where first they got rid of the designer, then they got rid of the advertising person, then the CEO himself was laid off. So it's really kind of, usually it's kind of comes in steps. And then there's a kind of a core group of people left who kind of have to keep the thing running, and it's really, really tough. Sometimes they'll reduce the salary levels. Like at one company I was at, they reduced salaries 10% across the board, management and rank and file. The problem is, of course, if you're a highly paid manager, 10% is something you can live with. But if you're a lowly editor or a designer, 10% of a small salary is really a huge issue for you. So that's something to think about. The next thing I want to talk about is freelance and design and marketing partners. So my recommendation is, if you have like close relationships with key freelance people and you want to keep on working with them and you have the budget to do so, and many companies do want to do this because it's a good relationship, very high talent, they don't have to hire a full-time person, so there's a reason to do that. Keep those people close because they'll be struggling too. And maybe there's something that you can work out if you have the budget to do it, where you can pay for some work in advance, or you can do something else just to make sure that they're not going to have to close up shop. Because they're going to have to leave, because you do want to keep your key suppliers and partners close and just talk with them and figure out what's going on, and if necessary, try to help each other out. Okay, subscription. So this is where the consumer bit of it comes in. If you have some sort of paid subscription, whether you're a news site or one of these new newsletters, people are going to start to cut their expenses. So this economic trouble that's taking place right now with, like, for instance, cryptocurrency bailing, people's stock holdings and 401ks are in the toilet. People start to tighten their own belts, and they'll start to look at what they're spending money on. And let's say instead of having 3 streaming subscriptions, they say, all right, we can just live with one of them. We don't need Disney Plus, and we don't need HBO Max, but I think we can just have Netflix and we'll be okay. If you're doing a newsletter, like, people are going to be very selective about what they want to pay for, or like if they have like a local news subscription, or even some sort of national news subscription. So I think what's going to happen is those subscription levels are going to decline. People are going to churn faster. Maybe you're going to have to increase the free period, or offer some other benefit, or maybe some other discount to keep people on. But that's just going to be the way things work out, and it forces you to be creative, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But just be aware that whatever subscription levels you had in the good times, those are going to suffer in the bad times. And then finally, the good news. I've just laid on some bad news. If you're a media company and you are bootstrapped, that means you're generating your own revenue. You are in a good position because you have revenue. Yes, the revenue won't be as much as before, but you have something. And actually, that's a huge advantage over all of these investor-funded startups, which are going to be really, really, really suffering. If you're like a one-person show, classic example would be a newsletter, a paid newsletter. There's other things you can do to kind of keep the lights on, even if you lose half your subscribers, and that could mean maybe doing some freelancing on the side or picking up some sort of part-time gig. But the fact that you have subscribers, you have a brand, you have revenue, that's a good thing, and it puts you in a much better position than the firms that don't have that. So just keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, we will get through this, and keep your customers, keep your readers, keep your partners very close. Treat your employees right as well as you can, and hopefully in a couple of years this period will be over and things will return to a better state. This is Ian Lamont from Lean Media. If this video helped you out, please take a moment to like it. Also, if you go to leanmedia.org, click on video, I have a whole bunch of video series about Amazon Seller, scams and pitfalls, my Lean Media framework. Check it out, or just subscribe to me on YouTube. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching.